Watch this as we've done the show. We're now joined by Mike Scarborough, TigerBait.com. Nobody knows LSU better than he does, and he joins us on 365 Sports. Mike, what is the interest level, the focus, locked in feeling you get with LSU in tomorrow's game with Baylor?
I think it's kind of a late arriving interest. I think also what probably plays into the late arriving interest is what LSU honestly has done in the transfer portal the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's changed the mood and the future outlook of the fan base. And I think now that you're, less than 24 hours away from kickoff, I think there's a lot of new interest. Of course, LSU, sold weeks ago their allotment of tickets, a huge LSU alumni base in the Houston area. And so I think it's going to be a really good game. Two teams that are evenly matched. It could go either way.
Mike, you brought up the transfer portal. I know on 3, they're the number 1 ranked team in the transfer rankings right now with 14 guys, including 8 4-stars. Just what's been kind of the recipe that Brian Kelly's cooked up there and just the focus of the portal here early on?
It's amazing. I mean, I'll be honest with you. 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was very skeptical. And what they've done has been absolutely amazing. Give major credit to Brian Kelly, his staff, Austin Thomas, the Bayou Traditions Fund. I mean, look, it's all money now. Mm-hmm. And certainly there was a lot of money that was freed up when Bryce Underwood flipped the prize 5-star quarterback that made a lot of it possible. But they've got just about everything they needed. I'd like to see him get another tight end. Another defensive back or two. But there'll be time for that. You still got a spring portal period. But what they've done so far with getting wide receivers and offensive linemen, edge rushers, a really nice punter. Center was a big need on that offensive line. They got a great one there. I've all of a sudden gone from my future outlook of LSU next season from 7-5, 8-4 to thinking 9-3, 10-2 possibly if they stay healthy.
How much did they have to do that? It's been a team that it just kind of existed in a way. Garrett, of course, Garrett, producing our show, has been kind of not happy about this team, and even from the beginning kind of called it. So how critical was some sort of feel good to close out this year?
It's very, very important. And look, you no doubt about it. You get these 14 practices in December, and if you can win the bowl game, regardless of whether you think it matters in the grand scheme or not, it's better than having a 5th loss. And then you go into the off-season program, like BK said that one of his early or late November, early December press conferences, he's going to have 37 either redshirt or true freshmen in his off-season conditioning program, plus all these transfer portal guys that will show up at midterm. So, you get to spring football, and it's going to be, I think, very exciting. And, but I think a big part of it, too, is I think the reason why there was, not only the skepticism, but even though I think the schedule on paper is not bad, it still flips in the negative way for LSU next year. Because you open up at Clemson. LSU, of course, has lost 5 straight openers. But you go to College Station, you go to Tuscaloosa, you go to Norman, Oklahoma to end the season. And, you get South Carolina, which what a job that the Gamecocks did this past season, and they're excited about their program. So it was just really to go back. The transfer portal was absolutely huge to get this fan base to, I think, re-engage and tune in and really have a much more positive outlook of the future, and not just everybody, doing the math on the back of an envelope. What's the buyout next year? What's the buyout in 2026, 27? I don't think anybody's doing that now.
How much do you think LSU fans are anticipating seeing Dave Aranda again just on the opposite sideline?
I think absolutely. Very much beloved here. 2019 national championship. Last time LSU had a semblance of a strong defense, to be truthful. I know him and Orgeron didn't get along there at the end, and Orgeron wanted to go to a 4-3, and then we know what happened after that. But how can you not like Dave Aranda? I mean, friendly guy, soft-spoken, cerebral. You guys recall. I mean, I was doing shows with you when you hired him. I didn't know that he wanted to be a head coach. To me, he seemed like a guy that was more behind-the-scenes guy, and maybe I was a little skeptical there. I don't know what your guys' evaluation is now after these handful of years and where it's heading, but look, he's either way. No one's going to deny that the LSU fan base hold him in very high regard, regardless.
It looks like maybe a bad few weeks on Wall Street, depending on the economy, or something's happening worldwide where the stocks are way down at 2-7, and then he's a genius Jedi. Nothing can be any better than what he did at 12-2. Then the next year they finished poorly. Then last year was awful. And he's been on the hot seat. And I mean, at times I don't wondered about how long he would last. Then they go 2-4. He's admitted he's changed. He's grown up. He's matured. He's learned a little bit about, in fact, even this year, talking about stop being so worried about whether guys are going to class. Not that doesn't matter, but other people need to do that. And he got into just football. And always heard from even you, Mike, from the beginning, his strength is talking ball. His strength is X's and O's. And that's what we've seen even after a rough start this year.
And look, you can go and switch head coaches and pay all these buyouts and do all that. And sometimes it just makes sense to stick with somebody. I mean, what were we saying 4 or 5 months ago? It was just like, who's going to get fired earlier in the season? Billy Napier or Sam Pittman? Right? That was a foregone conclusion. They're both safe.
Yep.
If you would have said, man, if something would have happened to Brian Kelly, something health-wise a year or two ago, who would have been the top of the list? It probably you would have said Norvell. Now you'd laugh at that. It's coaching is a fickle thing, and there's some very smart and strong coaches that lose their jobs, and sometimes you just need to stick it out, I think.
Mike, final thing for me, I know there's been a lot of opt-outs, declarations, what have you, so it's not going to be 100% LSU or 100% really anybody during bowl season, but what kind of roster are we looking at and Tigers team are we looking at head into the game tomorrow?
Well, I think, look, I don't think it's as bad as it was the last time LSU was in the Texas Bowl. No doubt not having the tight end Mason Taylor out there and your two tackles. There's a couple of DBs that won't be out there, but LSU fans will argue they're better off without them. Look, C.J. Daniel, Kyron Lacey gone. Going to give some guys some opportunity. Chris Hilton, if he picks up where he left off, Aaron Anderson, to me, was kind of the MVP of the offense. But I think LSU is, Baylor coming off the win streak. I think it's going to be a close game. Brian Lazar, our senior writer, is predicting LSU by 3. I know Preston Guy, who Garrett's going to do a show with later on, is going to pick LSU to lose tomorrow. And I haven't figured out where I'm at, but I could go either way, to be honest.
Mike, would you agree or disagree? And a lot of times it's where you are, and we try to be as open-minded on this, conference pride as anyone, and understand what the SEC has, what they deliver, what they've done when it comes to national championships. But even are you at times annoyed by, but we didn't have all of our players here, when it seemed like nobody has all of their players entering a bowl game if they win or lose.
No, the only teams that are holding on to everybody's are playoff teams. If you're not in the playoffs and you're in these secondary bowls, you're going to have lots of opt-outs. That's just how it's going to be. I think overall, though, I think LSU's probably faring a little bit better as far as that regards than they have in previous years. But I think the other part of it, talking about conference pride and what we're seeing in these games, and I think part of the reason why, and I get accused of being negative on LSU a bit, I was at 8-4 to start the season, and after they lost the opener, I was thinking 7-5 could be a real possibility. But I think every fan base from an SEC perspective is recalibrating what their expectations are. Even those teams from the SEC that made the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Nobody is deep anymore. I maintain none of these SEC teams that are in the playoffs could stay on the field with the top 2 or 3 SEC teams from a decade ago. They're just not as deep. But between NIL, transfer portal, so forth, I don't know if it's ever going to get back to where you're looking at a Georgia or the 2011 LSU Alabama or 2019 LSU or 2020 Alabama, whatever you want to bring up, where you can say, oh yeah, they're about to lose 13 guys to the draft, but look what they've got behind them. None of these schools have a whole lot behind them anymore. They're just not deep. Who are the juggernaut teams? That's why you see these teams barely inside the top 25 or not in the top 25, being real factors to beat top 5 opponents. It's just because who is the juggernaut team?
So do you see the portal where it appeared it might just make the rich richer like NIL might, but this is creating, in some cases, even though there seem to be 4 to 6 teams like Ohio State or Oregon or maybe Texas or whoever, Georgia, I don't know. Do you feel like the portal is actually creating some parity?
Oh, absolutely. Because I think the teams that have typically been your top 10, 12 recruiting classes year in and year out are probably going to be many of the same that they've always been. LSU's, finally gotten their act together NIL wise, and I think that it's going to get even bigger there. But the difference is that if you keep stacking all these recruits, and where LSU has, always had some, 5-star, and Alabama with 5 stars second on the depth chart, those kids aren't willing to wait anymore. So it evens the playing field because, Baylor and Colorado and teams outside the SEC can, if the shoe's on the other foot, you can go pilt for one here and one there. And so if you're an SEC team that has had a run like that, and maybe you didn't do as good of a job in the transfer portal in the offseason, well, if you get to November with a rash of injuries, you're in trouble.
Yeah, it seems like even though there's still separation, it's tighter. It's so much tighter. We may not see.
It's absolutely tighter.
Yeah, we may not see that in the college football playoff this year, but we might. We don't know because of what happens with the quarterfinals coming up. Of course, tomorrow night and then also on Wednesday. Mike, you're. I love the passion. I love what you mentioned. Garrett's an LSU guy. Garrett, you want to close it out with him because you could hear, I don't know if you feel the same way, but you could feel with what they've done in the portal, as Craig brought up, that it's given them a little bit of that oomph.
No, it really has. I think that it's been impressive what they've been able to do through the portal. And also with that, Mike, is having Harold Perkins back next year to go with the additions you brought into the portal. What does that mean for this team? And was that something that y'all saw coming down there, or was that kind of a pleasant surprise?
Yeah, I've been knowing for a month Perkins was coming back.
Okay.
And we were talking about it on every show, our live shows every week. And the only thing I'm dreading about that is the question every press conference in the spring and off season: how healthy is Perkins, and is he finally going to turn into a legit linebacker or star, or how are you finally going to be able to find a way to utilize him where he's a true guy on every down? And so that's not going to change. That we've had those same questions the last few years, but I think blowing Baker on that side of the ball. I'll say this: I think Baker and what he's going to have, particularly now with those edge rushers that they've added, he's about to start putting together some defenses that I think are going to get LSU back to what you're expecting and back to what is close to some of those Dave Aranda defenses. I absolutely believe that.
So do they know what the hell they're going to do with Perkins? Are they going to put him in a position to be who he was as a freshman, or are they still confused by that?
We'll see. The problem with Perkins is he's got a running back body. He doesn't have the length of a typical edge rusher. I mean, if you saw him in high school, I mean, how many recruiting guys that I talked to that said he was actually the best running back in Texas his senior year, and that he might need a couple of years to actually learn to be a linebacker? Well, we know what he did as a true freshman, but, people figured that out, how LSU was utilizing him. In the last game with A&M and in Georgia in the SEC title game that freshman year he was ineffective. And so then you want to make him a true linebacker, and that's really hasn't worked out for him. Like I said, he's kind of a tweener. So now talking about using him at the star position, we're going to see how they get it done. I mean, the fact of the matter is a defense that did improve. What was it? I think it finished 53rd. Is that right? The linebacker position was probably the strength of the defense. I think the linebackers actually played better after Perkins got hurt, because you weren't trying to shoehorn him in there and having the other guys having to play out of position when he was in the game.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Hey, man, love the knowledge and the insight. We knew we could get that from you. I wanted to ask you about the Perkins thing. I'm glad we brought that up, and we appreciate your time. 2:30 tomorrow, LSU Baylor. Ought to be fun. Two teams. I know Baylor's walking into this thing. They're red hot, and whether or not it plays over tomorrow, we'll see. Thank you very much, Mike. Have a great New Year, and we'll talk to you again around the corner.
Yeah, Happy New Year to y'all, and good luck on all your bowl coverage tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Mike Scarborough. We love him. Tiger Bait covers LSU with us on 365 Sports to wrap up today's coverage. If there's anything else we need